Okay. With apologies for not being muted all. I don't know how that happened either, but for those of you there, if you can make sure you're muted, that would be lovely. Everybody good? A little stretch time? Anybody down there want to go back up there? That's fine. Need a little sip of water. And how appropriate that tonight's talk is on distraction. Didn't plan that, but here we go. You guys hear me okay on the Zoom? Thanks, Renard. I think distraction is a topic that most of us can relate to, and especially distracting thoughts. And I'm calling this talk Dissecting Distracting Thoughts. Now, when I say dissecting, did that take anybody back to biology class, high school? Tell you where it took me. It took me to my son when he was probably 6, 7 years old. He discovered something that maybe some of you young ones don't realize existed. It was called an encyclopedia. And what this particular thing did was it had overlays. And the overlays for animals is you would get it this way, and then you would turn one and you would get what was happening inside. You would turn another and it was closer. You would turn another and it was closer. And I saw him on the back porch one afternoon, and I realized that in his right hand was the encyclopedia and in his left hand was a frog. And I decided to call that off in a hurry because he was wanting to see what was inside the frog. How about if we look at dissecting thoughts? And there are two suttas I would recommend for study. They're right together in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Middle Length Discourses. It's MN 19 and MN 20. So if you want to look those up on your phone, access the Insight, they'll pop right up and you can read them. The first, MN 19, two kinds of thought, is a teaching by the Buddha on dividing thoughts into classes. Sensual desire, ill will, and cruelty on the one hand, renunciation, non-ill will, and non-cruelty on the other. The second we're going to focus on tonight is the removal of distracting thoughts. And in this discourse, the Buddha gives 5 different strategies for working with troublesome thoughts and mind states. Very practical teaching on working with the mind when it gets caught up in distracting thoughts and mindfulness is not strong enough. Ever had a time when your mindfulness was not strong enough? Happened to me. If you want to really study this in detail, there's a book I would highly recommend called Beyond Distraction, 5 Practical Ways to Focus the Mind. It's by Shyla Catherine. Some of you think John and Thea, y'all actually studied. Anybody else studied with her? Debbie? Yeah. This is some good stuff. And I would recommend that. But I want us to look at this second sutta tonight, the removal of distracting thoughts. I'm going to read a little bit of it. Starts out traditionally, thus I've heard, at one time the Blessed One was staying at Savatthi in Jedda's Grove, Anapendagus Park. The Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus, saying, "Bhikkhus," and they replied to him, "Venerable Sir." And he spoke as follows: 5 things should be reflected on from time to time by the bhikkhu who is intent on the higher consciousness. What 5? When evil, unskillful thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion arise in a bhikkhu through reflection on a past action, He should, in order to get rid of that, reflect on a different object which is connected with skill. Then the evil, unskillful thoughts are eliminated, they disappear. By their elimination, the mind stands firm, settles down, becomes unified and concentrated just within his subject of meditation. Goes on to give an illustration of that. But the second one, if the evil, unskillful thoughts continue to arise in a bhikkhu who, in order to get rid of a past action or habit, thought reflects on a different object which is connected with skill, he should ponder on the disadvantages of unskillful thoughts thus. Truly, these thoughts are unskillful, blameworthy, and productive of misery. Then the evil thoughts are eliminated, they disappear, etc., etc. Number 3, if evil, unskillful thoughts continue to arise in a bhikkhu who ponders on their disadvantagedness, he should, in regard to them, endeavor to be without attention and reflection. Pay no attention to them. By this, the elimination occurs. Number 4, he should reflect on the removal of the thought source of those unskillful thoughts. And then the 5th one, if evil, unskillful thoughts continue to arise in a bhikkhu, in spite of his reflection on the removal of a source of unskillful thoughts, he should, with clenched teeth and the tongue pressing on the palate, restrain, subdue, and beat down the evil mind by the good mind. Talk about the struggle within. We're going to try that in a minute. By elimination, the mind stands firm, settles down, becomes unified and concentrated just within his subject of meditation. So let me summarize these 5. Number 1, replace unwholesome thoughts with wholesome thoughts. What are some unwholesome thoughts that might occur during meditation? Greed, lust, anger, delusion. These can be replaced. And here's some replacements. Kindness, gratitude, patience, wisdom, generosity. Now, isn't it amazing that those unwholesome thoughts seem to be more natural than the wholesome thoughts? They just sort of pop in. That's number 1. Number 2, examine the dangers of distracting thoughts. Can a thought be dangerous? Can, if it goes far enough. And if you begin to examine the consequences, it might be that that thought's not as good as you thought it was. I thought I was going to try again to have some shrimp. Now, the last time I ate shrimp, it was delicious. They're bonefish grilled. They're called bang bang shrimp. Anybody ever had any bang bang shrimp? I see that ancestor. Yeah. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try it again because it's been a long time since I've had them. And surely my proteins, or my medical people, surely my proteins have changed now and it won't be a problem. And then I got to thinking, thought number 1, do I have any Benadryl? Thought number 2, how much Benadryl do I have? Thought number 3, what's the date on the EpiPen that's in the back? And by the time I got through those, I decided I just wasn't going to try it. Because I know what would have happened. It's right in here. Anaphylactic reaction, the tongue swells up, and if it swells up enough, you have trouble breathing, and that's no fun. Think of the consequences of thoughts. How much better would the world be if people thought through their thoughts before they actually acted? So examine the dangers of distracting thoughts. The 3rd, avoid, ignore, or forget the thought. And a lot of this has to do with habitual patterns. Isn't it amazing how in some of our thoughts we have our greatest hits? We have things we go back to. Some of them are good, some of them are delightful, and others are like, God, I wish that would have been different. I have one of those I had to tackle. It happened in the fifth grade. You can look at me and tell it's been 2 or 8 years since I've been in fifth grade. But I could go back to that thought and I could figure out how my life would have changed if I had acted differently and if a certain coach had acted differently in that time. Now, you start doing that during a meditation, you're lost, you're gone. And I've learned to avoid, ignore, forget. Number 4, I really think is important. Investigate the causes of distraction. What is it deep down that brings some of those thoughts up? Why are they on the greatest hits list? What or who put them there? And another thing to realize about the causes of distraction, some of the events that come up, some of the thoughts that come up were when we were different people. I have a birthday next month. It's a great big one. It's not 40. There are thoughts that I can have looking back at a young age. Those thoughts shouldn't be around because that 30-year-old body's not around anymore. I was thinking, wasn't in meditation, but I was thinking the other day about the last time I ran a 10K run. If I'm going 10K now, I want to make sure the golf cart is charged very well because that's the only way we're getting there. But those thoughts can come up over and over and over. So I do want you to reflect a little bit, maybe not now, but whenever. What are your greatest hits? What are the thoughts that keep coming up? And are those thoughts wholesome and are they serving you in any way? Or are those thoughts that maybe you might want to look at getting rid of? And this last one, apply determination and resolve. And I want to go back and pick this up because I really like this. He should, with clenched teeth, okay, we're going to clench your teeth. You ready? And the tongue pressing on the palate up here, restrain, subdue, and beat down the evil mind by the good mind. We're going to do it. You ready? Restrain, subdue, and beat down the evil mind by the good mind. Now, with all due respect to the Blessed One, I hope I don't have to pull that one out very often. But one thing that Shayla Catherine writes is, don't doubt your strength. Because it just might be you need to take something on. And just take it on in such a way, this is going to be eliminated from my thought patterns. I am wasting time, valuable time, while I am thinking about something that doesn't matter, that's so long ago. And when we get caught in those patterns, we get caught in what Gil Fronsdale calls the ground between the way things are and the way we want them or wanted them to be. And that is a ground of suffering. The way it is, the way we want it to be, that ground in between is a ground of suffering. Can thoughts make us suffer? Absolutely. And when you think about what we're talking about tonight with distracting thoughts, we're still talking about the elimination of suffering. To eliminate something that we are bringing upon ourselves. In the book, there's an acronym that Shayla Catherine uses, and I found it even more helpful than at first I thought, because I believe distracting thoughts need to be examined internally as to their motivation and intention. And this acronym is WAIT, wait. Now she talks about it first in communication. Why am I talking? Now, the first thing I thought of was, why are you talking? Why am I talking? She writes, ask yourself, why am I talking? By pausing to ask yourself this question, you can clarify the intentions that guide your verbal actions. And I like to take it a step further. Why am I talking to myself? That ongoing conversation we have. And that conversation is so hard to recognize because we don't talk to ourselves in complete sentences. We just think, oh my goodness. Yes, chocolate. I've got one left. But it happens like that. Do I have chocolate in my mouth? No, we just start feeling it. We go very quickly. Walking to the mailbox. How many things can you see that need to be done walking to the mailbox? You ever walked to the mailbox and did so many things that you forgot to get the mail? Happened to me. These kind of distractions happen in life, but it's important to realize that we address these by talking about what happens on the cushion. And I'll get to that more just in a moment. Another weight. Why am I thinking? Why am I contemplating this? Even further, why am I texting? And this is old school, but it's still right. Why am I typing? And why am I on the third paragraph of something I know I'm going to have to tear up before I hit send? I'm going to have to hit delete. Why am I doing this? Why am I troubled? Why am I tolerating, as in putting up with a situation or a behavior that needs to be examined? Why am I trying? What is my motivation? And why am I trying leads us to intention, because right intention, knowing what our intention is a valuable part of the Eightfold Path. Why am I even trying to think wholesome thoughts? Why don't I just let my mind go? Why don't I just give up? Why is this effort important and important to me? Right intention, sometimes translated as right thought. And the importance of right thought is beautifully portrayed in the Dhammapada. Bought my little one tonight just to make sure you know the Dhammapada is a really good one. And if you want to be a card carrying, Dharma carrying person, you can just slip it in your pocket. It's really nice. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If a person speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows as the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If a person speaks or acts with a pure thought, happiness follows like a shadow that never leaves. So we look at our mind and we look at what's going on in our mind, and specifically on the cushion, there are things that we can experience. Number one is daydreaming. Ever been meditating and went out to lunch? That was an expression we have for a certain person that has my same last name. Love my sisters. She's out to lunch. Romantic fantasies. Judging, ranking, and comparing. You ever catch yourself doing that? What kind of meditator am I? Am I good? I'm getting better. Well, no, I'm not. God, that itches. And off we go. Planning. Evaluating your practice. Ruminating. Problem solving. All these can occur, and when they occur, what do? We come back right here. Two greatest words of meditation: begin again. Begin again. And if we can learn to do this on the cushion, then we can learn to do it off the cushion. We can learn to wait. Why am I talking? Why am I talking to myself? Why am I thinking? Focus on the breath. Become aware of what's going on in our body. Learning to bring our minds back. Being in the present moment. Being aware of impermanence, dukkha, and a non-permanent self. Isn't it great that those thoughts are impermanent and we can come back? We're not locked. We have a chance to bring ourselves back. And ultimately, there comes a point when all that we are is up to us. We realize that it's up to us. As Ram Dass said, we make the road by walking. And when we make the road by walking, there is a time when that realization is that we take responsibility. And I want to read a little bit about that to close. In a poem called The Journey by Mary Oliver. I invite you to just sort of settle in. You might even want to close your eyes for this. One day, you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice. Though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You know what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible, it was already late enough and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones, but little by little, as you left their voice behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds. And there was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life that you could save.